So my friends and I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D, for about 2 years now, and in that time we've accumulated a vast amount of memories, both crazy and funny, that I feel like we should share. So here is what happened in our first ever adventure. So Ted was playing as a cleric, he had Tom, who was a wizard, Harry, who was a hunter, Matthew, who was a warrior, Sydney, who was dual classing as a warrior wizard, so I guess he was a spell sword, and I was DMing. So it started off in a city where they finally managed to get a quest after milling around for about an hour, which involved them going to find some poor tavern owner's gramophone, which had been stolen by a band of orcs. So they head off to get onto their ship, which they owned, started off by owning that, and as they're about to leave, some guys who are a bit pissed off with Harry come running at him, swords and axes drawn. So Tom fends them off by levitating barrels of ale, setting them alight and firing them at them, which actually worked pretty well. So they set off for the orc camp by sea, which is about a day's sail down the coast. And while they're sailing in the night, they get attacked by some merfolk, and Matthew's at the back of the ship on deck. And that's where they come up, so Matthew naturally starts fighting them off. Harry's in the crow's nest, and he starts firing arrows, but he keeps missing. And Ted and Tom are below deck, and Sydney is on deck, but at the other side of the ship. Matthew ends up having to kill all of the merfolk himself, because Harry keeps missing his shots, and Sydney, Ted and Tom kept having to make dexterity checks to move, as it was a very stormy night and they were on a ship. And they kept failing and falling over. In the end, Matthew had to kill all of them by himself, no thanks to anyone else. So when they reached the camp, they decided to continue sailing the ship down a large river so they can get as close to the camp as possible. But they didn't really think that through, and it attracted the attention of pretty much the whole bandit camp, which turned out to be a legion of an army, and they ended up being surrounded by 6 orc ships. The orcs bored them, but the 5 of them spend about half an hour in the captain's quarters bickering about what they should do, turning down each other's plans as they came. So eventually Matthew just says, "F to the wind, I'm doing this," and charges out the door with his axe. The rest follow, and the cannons start firing. Tom and Ted decides to jump overboard and try and board other orc ships. And while this is happening, Sydney gets directly hit by a cannonball and flies off the ship, and is having a hard time staying afloat. Harry's pet wolf, and Matthew are still fighting on their ship when suddenly it blows up from all the damage. Matthew and Harry get off in time without being hurt, but Harry's wolf just gets blown to smithereens. Just blood everywhere. While trying to get to Matthew in the water, 4 of the orcs actually just drowned because they failed their dice checks and just couldn't hold their breath anymore. Ted tried 5 times to try and get onto the boat, and he failed the 4 previous times, and on the 5th time eventually got on it. But as he got on it, Tom had gotten onto another ship and tried to fire a cannon at another ship, missed that ship and hit the one Ted had only just got on, destroying that ship and flinging Ted back into the water. The fighting kind of loosened up from there, with eventually us deciding that they'd failed, and the only survivor was Tom, the wizard, who renamed his wizard Swagrid after his heroic survival. So yeah, that was our first ever D&D that took place about 2 years ago, and we've played many more times afterwards and experienced many more funny and awesome moments that I will definitely share with y'all in the near future. Until next time, take care.